what it says he's doing here is he's taking the water and he's separating some water above from some water below. All right? And when it says heaven here, when it says God created the heavens and the earth, heavens was just their word for sky. All right? It means more to us now because we have all the theology, and when they talk about the heaven to come, they give it this word of the sky. But heaven in this context just means the sky. And so there's water up in the sky. We still have water up in the sky most days. You can look up, you can see clouds up there. That's what's up there. That's what a cloud is. They didn't know this back then, maybe entirely, but a cloud that's water. And then there's water below. And God separates the water above from the water below. So the second day, you have sky and seas. And then it says, God saw that it was good. I skipped verse 9. Let the waters under the heavens be gathered together in one place, and let dry land appear. And it was so. And God called the dry land earth, or ground, and the waters that were gathered together he called seas, and God saw that it was good. And then God said, so I guess we could add dry land, and then we got number 3. Let the earth sprout vegetation, plants, and yielding seed, and fruit trees bearing fruit, in which is their kind, each according to its kind on the earth. And it was so. And the earth brought forth vegetation, plants yielding seed according to their kinds, trees bearing fruit, in which there was seed, each according to its kind. And God saw that it was good, and there was evening and there was morning the third day. What's God create on the third day? Huh? Let's say plants. Vegetation. What do you think? I'm a spelling wizard or something? Vegetation. Oh, I suppose I could just look and read it, huh? Okay, that's fair. That's fair. All right. Yeah, let's leave that for now. We should have Rose come and sing the whole song to us. For our CC group, I won't do that to you, Rose. But for our CC group, we sing the whole first chapter of Genesis every time at the beginning of it. Don't ask me to do it. But Rose leads it with a guitar, and she's so amazingly talented. And God said, "Let there be lights in the expanse of the heavens to separate the day from the night. Let them be for signs and seasons, for days and for years. Let them be lights in the expanse of the heavens to give light upon the earth." And it was so. And God made 2 great lights, a greater light to rule the day and a lesser light to rule the night, and the stars. And God set them over the expanse of the heavens to give light on the earth, to rule over the day and to rule over the night, to separate the light from the darkness. And God saw that it was good. There was evening and there was morning the 4th day. What's God create on day number 4? Why did God create the sun, moon, and stars? Yeah. Well, what it says here. Yeah. You know, it's really interesting. We live in a giant clock. We do. It works just like a clock. It spins and rotates, and so we have the day hand on it. The Earth is rotating to let us know the days, and then we have the moon, which distinguished for in ancient days that was determining how long a month was, and then each trip around the sun is 1 year, and beyond that, there's other mechanisms within the planets, but we are living in a giant clock. And if you look at it, the solar system, it works like a clock. And it's pretty clear that this concept of time was an important thing to God and an important thing for us, to put us in a system where we experience time in a certain way. Which means that this rhythm we have of days, months, and years, that those things come from God. And not only that, but seasons come from God. This idea that there would be spring and summer and fall and winter. And I know we know this, and this is not anything new to you, but just stop and think for a minute how God literally, He could have put us in a planet that didn't have seasons. God could have designed that. He could have said, okay, I'm going to make it so these things bloom this time of year, and I know there's different seasons for blooming things, but there's a general season where things bloom and a general season where things are dormant, and that's how the planet works. But God could have done it differently. He could have just said they're going to bloom all the time. Different branches are going to bloom at different times. And he could have had a perpetual one big long season. Why did He put us in a world with days and months and seasons?
Because that's how we function. There's certain times in the Old Testament where they worshiped God on certain days.
Okay, so maybe a part of it is that God is going to use that as a framework for worship. We're still in a framework for worship that has to do with this, right? We meet when? Sundays. We meet the first day of the week, Sunday mornings. That's when we get together. It's a weekly schedule. It flows there. We haven't mentioned weeks yet, but weeks come from God too. By the way, there are cultures, during the French Revolution, they tried to have a 10-day week for a while. Because during the French Revolution, they were trying to get away from anything to do with God. The French Revolution descended into chaos pretty quickly, and part of that chaos was throwing off, and to be fair, the religious leaders prior to that had not been very good. They'd been exploitive and things, and part of throwing off the gentile leaders of France and leveling the playing field was to throw off God. And so they had temples of reason, and they, which Bible isn't against reason, but it was an atheistic revolution. And they tried to do a 10-day week for a while, and it bombed. It bombed terribly because we're kind of designed for a natural rhythm, 7 days a week. Now, I'm sure like me, you've wished before there was one more day in the week. Yeah. 5-day weekend? 5-day weekend, 2-day work week, or? Yeah. All right. It sounds like Jeff is going to be running for public office, and so you're a little late for the endorsing conventions, but next time. Okay, so part of that maybe is to have this framework for worship, right? This that we could be in. What else? Yeah, why? Yeah. Boy, you are just my favorite person in this class. Yeah, she's brilliant. That's to me. I think it all has to do with theology, which the study of God. I think there's things that God is teaching us about Him and about us. One of the big differences between you and God is that you need sleep, but He neither rests nor slumbers. We have to have a period of rest he does not. And he sets us an example of rest later on in this chapter, and he makes it important that there are rhythms of rest that need to happen, right? But you might be able to pull an all-nighter. But the record for going without sleep is less, oh boy, I was going to say, I think it's around 7 days. Somebody could look that up. But you can go without food a whole lot longer than you can go without sleep.
Without sleep, it makes a person, they don't think right.
Yeah.
See things right.
But not only that, we are being taught something about faith and trust in the seasons. There's a time of planting and a time of waiting. There's a time of planting, and then we wait, and then there's a time of harvest. Why? That's the whole lesson of life. We're learning that what we're doing right now, the choices that we make in this life, we are in the season of planting, and there's an eternity of harvest coming. God is trying to teach us a lesson that in the now, we're building on something later. It's deferred gratification, the saying, right now, I'm going to do some things that are going to benefit later. And our whole universe is built that way. There's not fruit all the time. Yes? 11 days and 25 minutes. Oof, that sounds awful. My 19-year-old, of course, college. Yeah. Oh, at a science fair. You guys both were? Wow. Ugh. Yeah. And then he died or fell asleep? Okay. Yeah.
Just this last week, we had a little Bible study, and it said that God created the heavens and earth, in 6 days, and he rested on the seventh. And we are created in God's image. So did God set that example for us that we work, but yet we need to rest?
Yeah, the Bible specifically says that God does not need rest.
Well, right.
But he does rest on the seventh day. Now, the rest that he does is not in the sense of God does no work, because the whole universe is sustained by God's power. But what he does is he sets us an example. He completes. He says, I've completed creation. I'm going to rest from that work. And then Moses points back to that for the Sabbath. And he says, just like God did 6 days and then rested, that's what we should do. We should... And I'll just tell you, you should have a day a week that's about rest. You should. That doesn't mean that you do absolutely no work. And it doesn't mean that you only work on the other days or anything. But we were designed to have a rhythm of rest. And a rhythm of waiting. A rhythm of activity and a rhythm of dormancy, which means to me that in Minnesota we probably know more about God than places closer to the equator that don't have a winter, I would think, because we experience the fullness of God's creation. That's practically in the Bible. I think that's important. The Bible also talks about years in the sense of how many years you have. To me, it is fascinating that way back in Genesis, it says that human beings are going to live around 70 years, some of you more, some of you 80. And then it also says that the top limit is going to be around 120 years. I'll just tell you, here we are thousands of years later. What's the average age? The average age is right about 70. And the top age, somebody look it up. What's the average age worldwide? And the top age, the maximum age, is somewhere around 121, I think. Thousands of years later. By the way, you hear all the time that people used to live to be about 40 at different times in history. Actually, what makes the average death age around 40 was the high infant mortality rates and averaging those out. If you lived to adulthood in those ages, you had an expectation that you would, in most parts of the world, that you would live to around 70. Throughout the history of the world, even advances in medicine have only given us a few more years. Now, are there parts of the world that are less healthy and people die a little sooner? Yes. And places where people live longer. In the Middle Ages, when the bubonic plague was going on, people in Europe were dying faster, and we think that's the case around the world. But people in Asia were doing just fine. And so it's amazing to me. All of modern medicine and those predictions way back in Genesis are still around true. Now, I know by now somebody, what's the average age around the world, Gail?
72 to 73, and that was for 2004 to 2025, and that's men and women.
Yeah. Actually, the average age in the United States is going down a little bit, I believe.
It's different to just break it down, female versus male.
Sarah says this last year it started to go back up. Huh. Okay. Well, why do you think God does that? Why do you think he tells us this is about how long you're going to live? There are people throughout history who their hope was in living longer. People went looking for the fountain of youth, and there's fields of science that are all about figuring out how you can live longer and age longer, and people have paid to have their brains frozen or their body frozen so that when medical science gets to the point where they can wake them back up, that's their hope of eternal life, is that maybe someday we can live forever and in heaven. But here we've got this limit. Why is that important that we know that we have that limit? How would you like it if your professor said, I'm going to give you this test, and I want you to complete this test, and I just want to let you know that I'm not going to tell you at all how much time you have. In a sense, God does that with us because you don't know. You don't know if you have tomorrow. You should take life seriously, but we know that for the most part, we have around 70 years. I think the fact that this life is temporary is one of the things that God is trying to teach us, because we are not living for this life. The whole point of this life, what's the point of this life? To glorify God. That's why we were created, but that's going to be the purpose of us in heaven too. To worship and glorify God. What is the underlying purpose of this life? Yes, it's glorify God, for sure. It's to make a decision. We are alive, right? This life is to choose between life and darkness, good and evil. That's the point of this life. Now, we do that by choosing whether we're going to glorify God, whether we're going to worship him, whether we're going to spread the word, right? But the difference between this life and eternal life is that this life is about making choices. That's why there's options in this life, right? That's why there is good and evil in this planet right now, in this world right now, this universe, is because that helps us make the decision. We can make an educated decision. We can see the result of evil. We can see the result of good. And we can choose, and we can experience both, actually. But the point of this life is to make a choice. And we make that choice every day. All right. Okay. Let there be lights. We did that one. Okay. And God said, let the waters swarm with swarms of living creatures. Let the birds fly above the earth in the expanse of the heavens. And so God created the great sea creatures and every living creature that moves, with which the waters swarm, according to their kinds, and every winged bird according to its kind. And God saw that it was good, and God blessed them and said, be fruitful and multiply, and fill the waters in the seas, and let the birds multiply in the earth. And there was evening, and there was morning, the fifth day. birds, and sea creatures. You see the pattern that's starting here yet? Let's do one more day. And God said, "Let the earth bring forth living creatures according to their kinds, livestock, creeping things, beasts of the earth according to their kinds." And it was so. And God made the beasts of the earth according to their kinds, and the livestock according to their kinds, and everything that creepeth on the ground according to its kind. And God saw that it was good. And God said, "Let us make man in our image." We're gonna zero back in on this verse.
Separated the livestock from the, like, lions and tigers and stuff.
I don't think it used the word separating in there.
It says livestock and the other.
Yeah. I think what he's doing is he's saying he created everything. I don't think these are necessarily exclusive categories, although you can kind of separate things into these categories. What he's just saying is he created all these things, and I think the key is that everything that goes on the ground. All right. He said, "Let us make man in our image and in our likeness. Let them have dominion over the fish of the sea, over the birds of the heavens, over the livestock, over all the earth, over everything that creepeth, every creeping thing that creeps on the earth." And God created man in his own image. In the image of God he created them. Male and female he created them. We're going to unpack a whole lot of this. But, and I know it goes on further. But on day 6, before we get into any of that, he created animals and humans. And one of the things worth looking at in this passage, you could spend your lifetime just studying Genesis 1. One of the things to notice here is that from the beginning, God said there was a difference between human beings and animals. But first, I want to just show you something that I think is worth noticing that people miss a lot of times in Genesis chapter 1, days 1 through 6. They're in 2 groups of 3. Day 1, God creates the light, right? Then day 4, sun, moon, and stars to be lights in the sky, all right? Day 2, he separates the water above from the water below. He essentially makes the sky and the seas. Day 5, the birds and the sea creatures, right? He puts the lights up there, and then he fills the heavens with planets and sun, moon, and stars on day 4. Creates the sky and the waters, then he fills them on day 5. And then day 3, he creates the plants, not just the plant, that would have been boring. He creates plants, and then he fills the forests and the vegetation with animals and human beings. There's these days of separating and creating, and these days of creating and filling in this. It works kind of in the sense of like a structured poem. Now, you think about this. God is the one person who, when he speaks, he can bring poetry into reality. When God wills the world, he can will it into the shape that he wants it to be. I just look at this and I look at the way it's laid out and the intentionality there behind it and the structure in this. This is a poem. It's poetry. Now, I don't think that means it isn't reality, because I do think that this passage should be taken quite literally. However, let's just take a moment to step back and look at the way God chose to speak the world into existence. To me, it says a few things about his character. What do you think we see about God's character even before human beings are created on day 6?
He creates the place, or he creates, like, the sky, and then he creates the birds to fill the sky. And then he created.
Yeah. So he does do the context, and then he puts things into the context. Yeah. What are some things that we know about God from the first 5.5 days, before human beings are created? Yeah, you could say that. You could say, well, look at the amazingness of the universe that's been created. You can look at the fact that there's immense design in creation, right? To me, this is just so fascinating. The fact that every time we get a better microscope, we find that the world is more intricately designed than we knew about. We find out that things like the human cell are complicating, buzzing little factory villages of things being passed around in separate parts. And at the same time, they're replicating and interacting with each other and containing DNA information that's unique to each individual person. Every time we get a better microscope, we find smaller stuff. And we find out that the stuff we thought wasn't complicated is complicated, and it's way more intricate, that the human cell is more complicated than we used to think the universe was. Every time we get a better telescope, we find out there's more out there than we knew about, that it's bigger. And every time they find another solar system, I think, okay, God, you're just showing off. Right? Really? Another one? That's amazing.
I wonder why he created so much. I mean, it's one thing to be in our solar system, but then to create other solar systems.
Yeah, well, I think this goes to the point. God could have created a universe where there was human beings and one kind of food. Or he could have made it so we didn't even need food. Did he really need to make so many different kinds of animals? Did he really need to create so many kinds of plants? Huh? Or bugs? Did there need to be such variety? I'm not joking. I think God literally is showing off in creation. Showing off. There's not just butterflies. There's tons of kinds of butterflies. And then each butterfly has its own unique spread on the back of its wings and its own unique pattern and colors and things. There's not just flowers. There's gobs of flowers. Flowers that open different directions with different kind of petals, with different colors or multicolors. Some that open at different times of the day and different seasons. Some that have different smells. Yes, Helen? Yeah, I think not only is God showing us what he can do, and you look at creation, you see beauty. I don't think that's deniable. I think there's absolute beauty in creation, and you can take any category, and there's just beauty in creation. There's fun in creation. There's some animals that you're like, okay, God, you were just being silly. The platypus is amazing. The platypus is fierce. Platypus have poisonous burrs on their end. They're like, people should take the platypus seriously. But porcupines. I mean, creating an animal with a weird hairdo, and then just ostriches. Come on, ostriches. I really think that God just wants to display his goodness in creation, his greatness and his goodness. Yeah.
God created everything. So he gave man intelligence. So from everything that he created, we can also be creative. Because, you look at toothpaste, there's corn and toothpaste. Everything that we make has come from something that God has created.
Right. Okay, so no, you're not at all. I just don't want to forget Helen's point, which is the next one before I get to yours. Helen's point, as I understand it, was the interconnectedness of creation and how it functions together, right? And so you have food chains in creation, right? bugs that eat certain plants that are eaten by certain birds that are eaten by certain predators. That, there's these complicated things, and then not only that, the way they interact: salmon swimming upstream, the migratory pattern of birds, the fact that there are birds that can go little tiny birds that can go thousands of miles. In fact, the other day I was hearing about one bird. It can fly for 5 days over the ocean without rest.
But don't you think, Bob, that God created these things for our enjoyment?
Okay, so there's another one. I should be writing these down. So Helen's point, the interconnectedness and the complexity of creation and the dependence on each other. Diane's point about how we can be creative with that. But notice how I think God designed this world for us to be creative in it. Part of what the design of creation is, I think, is to have a medium. I don't think it's a coincidence that God made us to be builders and artists in the world. And I think we're designed to create beauty like He did, and He put us in a world of substance where we could do that. And then what was yours, Libby?
Just so we could enjoy.
To enjoy. I think that's 100% true. God could have just made cornmeal mush. But He says, taste and see that the Lord is good. I mean, there's fruit, there's honey, there's combinations of things, there's sugar, there's a variety of spices and things. The variety of food that we can eat and experience is immense and amazing. We are beyond out of time, and we have not even covered what I planned to cover in this. We're going to continue on in this passage next week, and we're going to talk about some of the big issues. But let's go ahead and pray. Father, thank you so much for your goodness. Please continue to teach us and to work in us. In Jesus' name I pray. Amen.